It's time to talk about Sam Darnold and this team because I don't know if it's going to be a one season and done for him in Minnesota. He looks like he's found a new home. Richard, they just drafted JJ McCarthy with a first round pick. How do you handle this situation if you're the GM of the Minnesota Vikings? What do you do if you're Minnesota? What if you're Sam Darnold?
If you're Sam Darnold, you're maximizing your potential. You're maximizing your earning potential. You want to be a starter and you want long-term security. And if you're the Minnesota Vikings, I don't see anything that shows you shouldn't give it to him. You know, he's having a really good season. Maybe you can look at his past and whatever and say, is this fool's gold? Is this real? But none of this looks like luck. It doesn't look like he's just, oh man, it's tipped passes or anything like that. He's going through his progressions. It just seems like a hand in glove fit in Minnesota. And so I can't see them really moving on from him and really restarting with JJ McCarthy. Maybe they would, they spent a high draft pick on him, but if that happened, I expect Sam Darnold to find work somewhere else and get a really lucrative contract. Whether that's the New York Giants, it would be really crazy if it's the New York Jets. I mean, you talk about full circle. Oh my God, I couldn't imagine. Oh, sheesh, that'd be a storyline. It could be a number of teams. It could be the Raiders if they don't draft Shedeur Sanders or Ward in the draft, if they don't take a quarterback or if they don't get the guy that they want. So there's a number of situations he could walk into and become the day one starter. But yeah, I think it's in Minnesota's best interest to just keep continuity. Maybe you give yourself an out after 2 years and then give JJ a chance. But I don't think you bring a rookie coming off an ACL injury into the National Football League who hasn't played a down and replace a quarterback playing as well as Sam Darnold has been for your team and really winning you a lot of these games. To have 5 touchdowns this game, 22 of 28 for 347, a career high, 5 touchdowns, a career high, 157.9 passer rating, almost a perfect passer rating. It just seems like the receivers trust him. He's got a great rapport with them. Jordan Addison, 8 for 133, 3 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, 7 catches for 132, 2 touchdowns. I think you're going to have a hard time having a conversation with those guys and saying, we couldn't pay Sam. He's gone. We got JJ, and you guys will figure it out with him. These guys are having really impressive seasons with him, and I know that they've had success with Kirk Cousins before, but I don't know how many times you're going to be able to keep doing this. And maybe JJ McCarthy comes in and does just as well, but I don't want to risk that if I'm the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, the Minnesota Vikings, they've obviously had a heck of a season, 10-2 now. Coming into this game, the whole talk of the NFC North is my Detroit Lions, and yet Minnesota's only a game back. And again, you got the emotions of Kirk Cousins coming back into town, and they get it done, and they double them up, 42-21. Kudos to the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, this team, they've got so many dynamic weapons on the offensive side of the ball. And then defensively, they're so well coached and they just get it done week in and week out. This Minnesota Vikings team is a force to be reckoned with. And I just hope, they stumble up down the stretch. So the final week of the season against the Detroit Lions is meaningless because you'd hate to see a shootout in Ford Field. But let's flip the script to Atlanta. This team started off hot, and now they're 6-7. They've had a 4-game losing streak. Kirk Cousins has struggled in that 4 games. 0 touchdowns over 4 games, 8 interceptions, 62 passing rating, 15 interceptions so far. Richard, is it time that they close that chapter on Kirk Cousins and turn the keys over to the car to Michael Penix Jr., their first-round draft pick?
I don't know. I don't know that. I just don't know if that's the answer. Maybe it is, and you put him out there, but for Fontenot to pay Kirk Cousins $50 million a year and put him on the bench, and then know that next year you're going into the next year with him on the bench as the backup, a $50 million backup is just the kind of conversation that gets people fired. And so I don't think they'd sit him because you have $50 million backing up. Just could you imagine the talking every game that's talking point. And so every time the rookie has stumbles or throws an interception or makes a mistake, it's going to be like, well, why do you have $50 million sitting on the bench? Or when you can't afford a free agent, why do you have 50 million sitting on the bench? If there are just so many conversations, and Kirk is struggling in a really big way right now, but hopefully he's able to come out of it and play well. You know, he's played well at points of this season. He threw for 344 yards. He did throw the 2 interceptions. But they were battling in this game for a while, and it was really closer than the score showed. They got away from them late. This Minnesota Vikings defense, Byron Murphy made a really great interception, one-handed interception in this game. But I don't think you can bench him. I don't think you can bench him at this point of the season. I don't think you can bench him with all the money you have invested into him, because I just don't think you have a way to answer those questions this offseason about what you're going to do with the guy you promised. He has 100-something million guaranteed. So it's not like you could just cut him and hey, next season you don't have to pay a salary. You're going to be paying him fully guaranteed money next year. So you got to just, this is the decision you made. This is the guy, and you got to stick with him, good or bad. You got to keep going.
Well, his replacement in Minnesota, Sam Darnold, has earned this week's Players in Prime Time, brought to you by our friends and partners at Breitling. Richard, I switched it up today considering the Lions played on Thursday, and I went with my alternative Breitling watch.
Ooh.
It's a beauty.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
What do you
nice.
think? Crispy? Yeah, beautiful.
That's nice.
Well, Sam Darnold is a recipient. We already talked about it, man. I mean, listen, I'm not going to throw him in the MVP conversation, but his stat line today certainly was deserving of such. 347, 5 touchdowns, a 157.9 passer rating. Shout out to Sam Darnold, our Players in Prime Time recipient of the week, brought to you by our friends and partners at Breitling.